Hey everyone, welcome to the 5 Beer Plan. I'm Brian, and this is the ongoing saga of an Everyman's Ale Trail. In this episode, I celebrate my 100th episode of All Things Beer and review a big beer from Masthead Brewing in Cleveland, Ohio. But before we get this party started, here is this episode's burning question. What is your favorite beer with 100 IBUs? According to Untappd, mine is Big Ass Money Stout 3 from Evil Twin Brewing out of Brooklyn, New York. And it's a collaboration with Lervig and brewed by Westbrook Brewing. This is a 17.2% ABV Imperial Stout with a whopping 120 IBUs. I had this beer 7 years ago in a Tavor shipment. I noted it had a big taste and big aroma. Big, dark, dangerous stout. Pours like molasses and tastes like money. So satisfying. Cheers, Evil Twin. Whoa! In this special segment of Tales from the Trail, I take a look back at a little over 4 years of beer, brewing, and beer skis. When I started this journey, I had no idea how long it would run or how far it would take me. But here we are. The number 100 is significant in entertainment, as it is a big deal when a television show reaches that many episodes. I never really thought too much about it, other than it was pretty cool. It was brought to my attention that in the podcast world, this is actually a big deal. John Dispenza, who will pop up throughout this episode, told me the following. 100 episodes is special, and that puts you into the top producing podcasts ever made. For the record, there have been about 5,890,038 podcasts made, and only about 407,880 have ever made it to over 100 episodes. If I do the math, that puts the 5 Beer Plan in the top 6.9% of all podcasts ever produced. Crazy. We don't need another stinking podcast. As one who consumes podcast content, there are many, many choices out there. You can find pretty much any type of topic in a podcast. Having listened to beer podcasts, I knew it would be a tough space to exist for my take on beer. But it had to be done. There was just something about this topic that needed to be told in a different yet ordinary way. Approachable, humorous, and simple. But who wants to listen to some guy named Brian from the Midwest ramble on about beer? And thus was born the mythos of the everyman. I've always loved words and wordplay. My grandmother got me started on crossword puzzles decades ago, and we had some epic games of Scrabble too. And she used to kick my butt even into her late 90s. And this comes out in my content. I'm a mechanical engineer, and though some of those stereotypical views do fit, such as enjoying math and trying to fix things, others, such as having poor social and communication skills and lacking creativity, absolutely do not. I've always thought of myself as the atypical engineer because of that. So I intentionally try to make sure the segments and even titles of the episode use alliteration and rhymes to get the point across in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way. Again, that's who I am, and makes it somewhat memorable. Segments such as Tales from the Trail, Hop Hacks, Looking for Lupulin, Homebrew Hijinks, Yeast Feast, Barstool Banter, Last Call Review, Tasting Notes, they all represent who I am. So back to the topic of beer. I like to drink beer, specifically craft beer. So the question of how one might get some free beer persisted. So I schemed and planned and wrestled with the idea. Then the light bulb came on. I could host a podcast and offer to review beer. Brilliant! Except that's not exactly the way it played out. I am not going to sit here and tell you that getting a free beer or two has not happened. Those in the industry are more than happy to share what they've created, especially when they have something that's special. I have received plenty of beer over the years, pints or tasters at the brewery, some brewery takeout, and even cans shipped to my home. Not the overflowing amount that I thought I might attract with my slant on the podcast, but enough that I'm grateful for the generosity and investment of those in the industry that I have crossed paths with. For the record, the primary reason that I started the podcast 5 years ago was to shine a light on those who I feel are carrying the banner for craft brewing and give them a platform to share their stories. They do not necessarily have to own a brewery or brew beer. I just want to share their unique and passionate view of the industry to inspire my listeners. This still is a driving factor for the guests I choose to have on the podcast. I am very grateful to each one of those I've had on the show, starting with one who I consider a mentor, none other than the uber-talented John Dispenza. Our paths crossed when he was a co-host on the Untapped podcast with Harrison Hickok. John helped create it, and I helped consume it along with many other listeners. He encouraged my vision over the course of many weeks and even agreed to be my first interview. As a podcaster and creative himself, his insight and suggestions during the pre-planning phase of the podcast and those first formative episodes in my first season really helped me find my voice. The best advice he gave me was something to the effect of, if you're expecting to be the next Joe Rogan and have 10 million followers, you might want to lower your expectations. And that certainly was the case. I set the bar low. I never really expected much, and I still don't. I know that craft beer is a niche topic, but if it brings a fresh perspective, a new brewery, or additional appreciation of the craft for just one listener, then I have succeeded. So how did it all come together? The cornerstone of the podcast is a program called Audacity. It is a freeware for audio editing that is easy to use and pretty intuitive even for the novice. You can do as little or as much with it as you want. As I reflect on it, if I would have been required to invest in a real software package to start the podcast, the 5-beer plan may never have gotten off the ground. I was not really sure how long this thing would last. A season, maybe 2? And yet here we are 100 episodes later. Another critical part of any podcast is growing the audience and expanding its reach. Depending on how you listen to the podcast, I host it on Spotify and use their free creator tools to publish and push out each episode to other major podcast platforms. Super easy. One other fun fact. Unless you are awake, you may not even notice that I release each episode at 5:30 a.m. on the 12th and 24th of each month. Spotify's creator tools are flexible enough that they allow me to schedule episodes as soon as I have them ready to publish, meaning I don't have to be sitting in front of my computer to do so. A few more fun facts about the podcast. As of late January, these are the stats. Currently, there are 69 followers of the 5 Beer Plan on Spotify. A huge thanks to each and every one of you for following along. The majority of my listeners land in the 45 to 59 age range, though listeners range in age from 21 to 81. Thanks, Mom and Dad. More than 80% of my listeners are male, with 5% female and 0.5% non-binary. The rest are unspecified. I'd really hoped this would be a little bit more balanced considering I try to have a diverse assortment of guests on the show. The U.S. listeners dominate, representing 36 states, with the tri-state area of Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio at the top. Washington State is a close fourth. More than 30 other countries are also represented. My friends in Germany, Canada, and Austria lead the way internationally. Dankeschön and merci. There have been more than 3,300 times an episode has been streamed for a minimum of 60 seconds. Recent stats show that each episode averages about 19 plays. Not too shabby. I'm truly humbled and grateful that even this many people have consumed my content. Whether you're a new listener of the podcast or have been with me since the first episode, this pod's for you. Over these first 100 episodes, I have had conversations with 47 guests from 13 different states and many different aspects of the craft beer industry. I have been fortunate enough to chat with many brewers and owners, a couple podcasters, an artist, cartoonist cicerone, a scientist, a couple of craft beer enthusiasts, a deputy director, a homebrew store owner, and even my daughter. Each discussion has brought me closer and closer to a better understanding of beer, brewing, and the industry at large. The end of an era. The English poet Geoffrey Chaucer once wrote that all good things must come to an end. In this spirit, I will take this opportunity to wax poetic about the industry. Sadly, through the course of these first 100 episodes, the overall craft beer industry has been in decline. Surprisingly, the peak number of craft breweries in the U.S. was at an all-time high, just shy of 9,800 craft breweries in 2024, which was also the first year on record that the number of closings exceeded the number of openings. The year-over-year trend of the number of craft breweries since 2019 indicates the industry is plateauing, with a decrease of approximately 2% each year. The year-over-year growth for 2024 was just 0.5%. Statistics for 2025 are not yet published by the Brewers Association, but I suspect that the growth of the industry will be flat at best. And it doesn't look like this is going to change anytime soon. In my opinion, this overall decline is somewhat out of the control of the actual craft breweries. Accelerated by the pandemic of 2020, restrictions to socializing in public areas led to zero taproom traffic for an extended period. This is where the craft brewery maximizes its profits with butts in the seats. The effect of this still lingers 5 years later. Current stressors, such as inflation and tariffs, continue driving producers and consumers alike to cut costs. The popularity of mass-produced seltzers and ready-to-drink beverages among younger consumers continue to leave the local craft brewer struggling to compete. This means that the median age of the typical craft beer consumer is higher than ever. And finally, you have large global beverage companies such as Mahou, AB InBev, and Kirin acquiring larger, regional, or microbreweries in order to expand their distribution footprint and oversaturate the market with craft beer that is mass-produced. Yes, it is more convenient to drop into the big box stores and pick up a 6-pack or a 12-pack of beer, and I'm guilty of doing this when no other options are available, but this does nothing to really help the craft industry as a whole. Even here in Ohio, regional distribution deals hobble the local craft brewery with deals that are a fraction per can compared to that of an equivalent taproom sale. This is why I have always ended my show from the very beginning with the phrase, support your local breweries. As supportive craft consumers, it is our responsibility to do exactly that by sitting in the taproom or getting cans, crowlers, or growlers to go. Every dollar you spend locally is going to directly support the brewery. Now, I don't want to paint it all as doom and gloom. What we are dealing with is a mature industry. It is only natural that growth will slow and that there will be attrition. there are still plenty of choices out there for the consumer. As a result, the quality of the beer will continue to improve, and I think we will see craft breweries overall continue to trend away from hype beers and more toward classic styles. I wish I had a crystal ball to see what the next 5 years are going to look like in the industry. Not surprisingly, of the breweries featured on the show, 7 of them have scuttled their operations. I would be remiss if I did not tip my proverbial hat to those that have fallen. So in memoriam, in order of their appearance on the podcast, I raise a glass and acknowledge, one last time on the podcast, Iced Tear Brewing, True Colors Brewing, Brewery Nix, Tres Gatos Brewery, Masthead Brewing, Pulpo Beer Company, and Loaded Dice Brewery. Thank you all for joining me on the show to talk about your brewery. I truly enjoyed it. Each of these breweries, unique in their own right, still managed to leave their imprint on their respective regions of the industry and me as well. For some, it was market demand. For others, it was oversaturation. For a few, it was just bad timing. At the end of the day, the closures of these breweries leave a void in the craft beer industry and in my personal ale trail experience. I miss them. Who the hell are you, and what have you done with my podcast? My grandparents would use their Panasonic portable tape player and recorder at birthdays when we were younger. I have a cassette tape from more than 50 years ago knocking around in a drawer somewhere that was recorded at someone's birthday. It's kind of weird to hear the mini-me rambling on in that high-pitched voice. I had this realization that what I've created over the past 100 episodes is out there forever. Even if I try to shut down the feed and delete the episodes, there's no taking it back. It's kind of like squeezing out the contents of a tube of toothpaste. Our words are the same. Try as you might, you can't get the toothpaste back in the tube. I think every podcaster or content creator understands this. It is a risk. So I thought it would be fun to take a quick listen back to my very first episode. And the funny thing is, I don't think I've listened to it since it was released back in January of 2022. So here it is. I've always joked that I have a radio face, and that is part of the reason why the podcast is audio only. In the words of Professor Marvel in the 1939 original version of The Wizard of Oz, "Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain." Such a great scene and such an analogy for a podcaster. I would like to give you a glimpse into what goes into the 5-beer plan. I'm not going to try and hide it. A majority of my content is highly scripted to ensure I don't miss something important or useful that I want to share. I do my due diligence for my segments to learn as much as I can about a topic, and then distill it down to how I might convey it in my own words. There are times I may lean on quotes or facts verbatim from other sources, for which I give appropriate credit, just because I can't say it better or more concisely. I looked back in my file archives. I have 5 different versions of the podcast saved in various forms before this final version was completed. I even have recordings of a lot of the introduction of individual segments. I originally thought that I could use a plug-and-play approach, avoiding the need to record each and every word. I learned quickly that was not going to happen. There are just too many variables at play when recording. Ambient noise, status of your voice, microphone settings, hiccups in the interview recordings. In order to provide continuity within a particular episode, I try to record everything in one sitting. I am a child of the best era of music, the 80s. For those that know me and follow my Instagram feed, I'm a big fan of rock and metal music from the era and wanted an intro and an outro that would match that feel. I wanted something upbeat that wasn't ordinary. I'm grateful to royalty-free websites that give you permission to use their music. I listened to so many royalty-free clips during the development phase of the podcast. I found songs that were close. Here are some that just didn't make the cut. Not bad, right? Well, at the time, I was going through an Iron Maiden phase. Their song, Stranger in a Strange Land, was the vibe I wanted. Here is a short clip for reference. Oh yeah, I don't really have the rights to do so, but if you're a true audiophile, whether you like the genre or not, pause the podcast, do a quick search, and listen to the first 20 seconds of it. I think you'll agree that it's got a great vibe. I like the bass guitar intro, the muddy tone of the guitars, and the marching tempo. I'm still really happy with my theme song. I think it stands the test of time, and I don't think I'll be changing it anytime soon. As my monologue started, I came out of the gate strong. Hey everyone, welcome to the maiden flight of the 5-beer plan. My name is Brian, and I'm just an everyman here in the Midwest who loves the craft beer scene. This show is about the ongoing saga of my personal ale trail. I'm all about trying something new wherever I go, so unless it blows me away, I rarely have the same beer more than once. In my travels, I've found that most breweries will offer flights of beer that vary in number from venue to venue. My personal favorite would have to be the 5-beer flight because it allows me to strategically plan the styles of beer to sample and in what order I want to drink them. In this episode, I'll talk ale trails, hop hacks, chat with John from the Drinking Socially podcast, and review Double Toasted Marshmallow from Decadent Ales. I packed a ton of content into the first 5 minutes. Red, White, and Blue was produced by Pabst from the Prohibition to the mid-1980s and was what they called an honest beer at an honest price. It makes sense to me. Who wouldn't feel patriotic drinking a beer with a name like that? The mainstay of Pabst Brewing through the years was their flagship beer, Pabst Blue Ribbon. It was originally called Best Select, and then Pabst Select. The current name came from the blue ribbons that were tied around the neck of the bottle. This was done from 1882 until about 1916, and then it was stopped due to a silk shortage during World War I. After Prohibition, the blue ribbons were once again tied around the neck of the bottle up until about 1950. It sure makes the wax-dipped bottles of beer seem a bit chintzy, doesn't it? And last but not least, Old Milwaukee. It was produced in the city it's named after and was considered a value-priced beer. So it seems to me that for the hardworking Americans of the day, the main consideration of these beers was price. Wow, I have to admit, I love the historical aspects of this early episode. It reminds me that enjoyment of beer is truly a journey. You have to pace yourself, otherwise you'll get burnt out. The content of the first episode, and really the first season in whole, was carefully planned over a period of several months before this one even hit the internet. I'm happy to return to the historical roots of beer once again in Season 5. It's even weirder to hear your adult voice. I've never really been thrilled about the way it sounds. My wife brought to my attention about halfway through these first 100 episodes that sonically, I was underutilizing the richness of my normal speaking voice, or something to that effect. I guess I would agree with her after listening to this episode once again. At times, it seems like I'm forcing the dynamics. I also sound way too excited. Not that that's a bad thing. Well, it's time to start poking a little bit of fun at myself. It's somewhat therapeutic. I will say that my editing used initially was sufficient because it cost me absolutely nothing. Even with the so-called noise suppression of the mic I had, my breathing between topics is distracting to me now. Yeah, that's a bit creepy all looped together. Sorry about that. Fortunately, with a proper podcast mic, I've been able to mitigate that to some extent in recent content. I do have to laugh. I chose my first guest, John Dispenza, very strategically based on his expertise with podcasts and beer. He's a hero of mine, and I call him a friend as well. He has his sonic quality dialed in, and the cadence of his comments seems so thoughtful even when he responds. You might recognize his name from the Untapped podcast, which is where our ale trail paths crossed. John, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining me on this maiden flight of the 5-Beer Plan podcast.
I've never been so happy to be on a flight with a friend. Thanks for having me, Brian.
and throughout the conversation he brings it back to topics previously mentioned during our discussion, which is something that I need to continue working on. One of the foundational segments was always going to be my last call beer review. I had always thought it would be very real and raw, just like you were sitting down with me as I drank the beer.
It's nearly time to wrap things up, but first, one more for the road. I'm super excited about this segment of my podcast. What I'm going to do each episode is to do a little tasting for you in real time.
Wow, I have certainly polished this over time, removing the awkward pauses, the long gaps between smelling, tasting, and thinking, and then adding my 5-taster rating at the end. Because I want to pursue being a beer judge at some point, the whole idea was using a BJCP type rundown of the beer for the listener, describing visuals, aromatics, palate, and style. My first beer review was Double Toasted Marshmallow from Decadent Ales. It was a 9.5% ABV double IPA with a ton of adjuncts to try and emulate a campfire kind of vibe. I like the content, though once again, I feel like I rushed the review a bit on the cutting room floor and didn't leave enough dead space between sips, tastes, and overall comments.
So I'm going to go ahead and take a sip of this and see what happens. This is definitely an interesting beer. From the get-go,
That's one of the things you catch when you're doing a first pass listen prior to a release. Plus, I was very cognizant of trying to keep the episodes to 30 minutes each, which clearly doesn't always happen, and I'm okay with that. Plus, I refer to this beer as this guy way too much.
I'd be willing to bet as this guy sits a little bit longer. So when I pour this guy out, I actually poured this guy out into a tulip glass.
I also wanted the podcast to have an interactive feel.
If you've tried this, just let me know what you think.
It never has really developed the way I had hoped. I've tried a few different ways, asking for favorite beer styles, enabling comments on Spotify, giving out my Instagram and email. What I've been reminded of is that no matter the topic, the best interaction is the in-person interaction. That's where community and relationship is built. God bless my wife, who probably out of pity added a comment on Spotify a year ago. Surprisingly, the first season me and the fifth season me are not too far apart from the content and the vision of the podcast. With a little spit and polish on this first episode, you might not even notice a large difference. If you've never listened to the humble beginnings of the show, please do so. I'm really proud of this podcast. It isn't perfect, it isn't highly polished, but it is creative, it is unique, and it is me. Yes, they really said that. When you are chatting with 47 different guests for an hour at a time, there are bound to be some quotable gold nuggets that you just can't ignore. Over the years, I've jotted down quotes on Post-it notes because they are just too good. Here are a few of my favorites. When I can share a beer with 3 or 4 other people, that's my sweet spot. I just love to drink a whole lot of bourbon barrel-aged weird stuff. Podcaster and beer lover John Dispenza. Cleanliness is next to godliness when it comes to beer. Houston Lett of Masthead Brewing. I'm in the business of making memories. Beer is just the catalyst. Trent Snyder of Bridge Up Brewing. I'm not taking responsibility for it. I'm just taking care of it. Chris Gibbons of Brass Ring Brewing. Beer is ever-changing. Why shouldn't our menus be? Britt Schlechter of Weird Sisters Tap House and Brewery. Good brewers dump bad beer. Paul Slaga of Brewery Faison. The other products we have in our taproom aren't competition, they're context. They help establish the grounds of what we do. Ron Extract of Garden Path Fermentation. It's not about you, it's about the consumer. Steve Corbin of Feed Store Beer Company. Draw the light to Metro Detroit with craft beer. Eli Green of Stumblebum Beer Company. Time is the 5th ingredient. Chris Gibbons of Brass Ring Brewing. I'm sure there are many more that I should have written down but didn't. So here's your chance to chime in. What's the best beer quote you've ever heard? A taste of home. Welcome to another segment of Tasting Notes. Today I'm joined once again by one of my good friends, Daryl, who now hails from Wilmington, North Carolina. Daryl, thank you for joining me once again for this segment of Tasting Notes.
Brian, it's great to be back. Different venue, but still great to be here to take on another special beer that I brought back from across the pond.
I appreciate that because it has been a hot minute since we last spoke, and life changes quickly. Last time we talked, I mentioned that you and I usually go to the Northwest Ohio Barbecue. Man, I missed you this year. I found someone else to go with me, but it wasn't exactly the same. Have you found any interesting beer fests down your way?
Well, yeah, I'm always, traveling, always looking out for that. And now I'm down in Wilmington, North Carolina, the home of our legendary Untapped, which again is how we met.
Yep.
And so in scouring the Southeast and finding a way for another buddy of mine and I would do this once a year, got down to the Charleston Beer Fest. And I got to tell you, the venue was this park. It was outdoors right on the bay. It was this scenic giant park. They had it well spaced out. The temperature couldn't have been more beautiful. It was in the fall. Beers from all over the South Carolina. There was probably 50 of them. And they had their own separate VIP section, which was great. And I'm telling you, if you're a traveler of any kind, staying in that North Charleston area, which I just heard about on the last episode or one of these episodes,
Yep.
and going to this thing is just, I can't speak highly enough. Again, not the same. It was my buddy, but, this was great.
And yeah, I do want to give you props. I think I mentioned it in the last episode. You were the one that turned me on to Weird Sisters and reaching out to Britt. I can't wait for you to hear the next couple of segments of the interview because what she's doing there at Weird Sisters is crazy good and just amazing.
Yeah, and this first one, when she talked about the venue, I mean, it really is a house party. So Friday, we're in that area walking around, and I saw this house that had the neon sign on it. It's like, well, this is interesting. And I hear the music coming out of it, and I walk in, and this is like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and it smells like the brew is going. I said, who is working this late on a Friday? And Britt was back there, busting her tail. And her partner there that helped start it was sitting at the bar. We sat at the bar, and it was just a great experience. And the beer was great. And again, I can't say enough great things about the whole area.
Once again, the shoe is on the other foot because you went and did a little traveling over Thanksgiving and brought back another unique beer from Scotland. What we have today is Strawberry Sundae from Vault City Brewing in Edinburgh, Scotland. And their description says, strawberries and Vault City go hand in hand, and this delightful sour is strawberries and cream in a glass. Sweet and juicy, Scottish strawberries pair perfectly with our sour-based beer to create something smooth and full-bodied. You can expect mouth-watering flavors of traditional strawberries and cream with the addition of lactose and smooth vanilla. So this is a 5% ABV fruited sour. Clearly, I have not had this beer before, so I'm really looking forward to enjoying it together. So we've been talking for a while. Are you ready to crack this open?
I've been staring at it for a minute. Let's go. Give it a little swirl.
That's got such a great nose. It's popping out of there already.
Yep. And like we've talked about before, Vault City, they're a sour maker that what they claim is exactly what they do. A lot of food, but a lot of European flavors. This Strawberry Sundae is probably one of the simpler things we did. The last time we had that carrot cake, and it was orange, and it tasted like we were drinking carrot juice right from the garden. It was crazy.
It was.
This is, I think, is going to be a little more tame and certainly erring on the sweeter side.
But I'm sure it'll be probably just as delicious. It's an interesting color. It's kind of it's an orangey strawberry kind of color.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Nice white head, though. I just have to say I poured it into a nice tall tulip glass. It just looks beautiful, doesn't it?
That's a professional pour right there, my friend.
Oh, it's got such great strawberry aroma, Daryl.
And you get just a little bit of cream towards the end, right? Just to kind of tie it together. But the strawberries are pouring out over the glass. And, the environment of Scotland is similar to Michigan in terms of its climate. So they can grow really juicy strawberries, really juicy cherries. Like there's some similarities, especially spring, summer, to what it's like in Michigan. So if you're thinking about a Michigan strawberry, it's going to be very similar to what you're getting over there.
I'm anxious to try this. In fact, I'm looking at this again. I'm just seeing it move here in the glass. It says that it's 5%. but it also said it's full-bodied, and I can see that it does have a little bit of, I'll say, viscosity to it. Shall we?
Yeah.
It tastes just like fresh strawberry.
And it just keeps going and going and going.
It does, like from the front all the way down.
Yeah. There's nothing off-putting about it. There's a little zing there to start off. So you know you're dealing with a sour, but it quickly turns into a dessert sour, if you will. And it's as strawberry as you can get.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Beer is just like alchemy. It's magic. I don't know what it is. Seriously, I probably will never leave the brewery for hours just because of the amazing beer that they produce.
So Vault City in Edinburgh, which is where we go, they have We Vault, and it's their tap room, and they call it We Vault because it literally, I bet, is 15 feet wide, 30 feet long, and that's it. So you got to get reservations for your stools and to sit there. It's so unique what they do, and so different from anything else in the city. It's a treasure, but you've got to know where to go and know where to find, easily walkable. And they're trying to bring it over here to the States. And if anyone ever has a chance to grab one, I highly, highly recommend it.
Other thing I really like here is the lacing on the glass. I mean, that just tells me also that it's just a really well executed beer.
Right. You know, we've talked about this before, is that I can tell, or I have a sort of a predilection, if you will, if something tastes artificial. If this was artificial strawberry, it would be thinner, it wouldn't last as long, and you'd be able to see right through it. But these, what they do, and this beer in particular, is the real deal. Again, I get that cream even on the background that's there. It just really stretches it out and gives it that dessert feel versus the fresh fruit feel.
Just another amazing beer. You're my hero.
Well, there's something to be said for finding the one-off breweries. And the podcast does such a great job because I've even learned about some breweries I'd never heard of, and frankly wouldn't have, that I've been able to check out.
Yeah, thanks.
You say it all the time, these little regional, local breweries, get out there, support them, try their stuff. They may not all have everything that you want, but just the experience is exceptional by itself, and you never know when you're going to stumble across a place like a Vault City, like a Third Eye, like Wired Sisters down in Charleston. You remember forever.
Yeah, for sure. Man, I'll tell you what, this beer, it makes me want to cry. Freedom! Well, you know, Daryl, on the podcast, when I review a beer, I rate it out of 5 tasters on the flight board in half increments. So what do you think about this beer?
4.25 is where I'm going to land because it's so authentic. Yeah. And it's so true to what it's trying to do. You want a strawberry in a glass? Here it is. If you can find better, God bless you. I don't think it exists.
I would agree. I mean, it just has such a great aroma. Flavor-wise, as you said, that strawberry goes through and through. It has a nice medium to full-bodied mouthfeel. It feels authentic, like you said, and it just lasts. It just goes and goes and goes. So I think I'd probably give it a high 4 tasters out of 5 on the flight board. I appreciate you sharing the beer with me. So cheers, my friend.
Cheers, mate.
This is so good, dude.
Top 5 lessons. As I look back in the proverbial rearview mirror, there are a few things I have gleaned from the podcast experiences. So hot off the press, from the home office in Pioneer, Ohio, here are the top 5 lessons learned from hosting a beer podcast. Number 5. Make sure you have halfway decent recording equipment. I've had my share of audio issues in the past, and though my original vision was intended to be more of an in-person feature, I get more consistent quality using Zoom recordings. Number 4. You will be disappointed. Just because someone said they would join you on the podcast, will send you a beer to review, or because you have a beer crush on them and talk about their beers all the time doesn't mean they will. Though well-intentioned, I have had my share of disappointments. I don't take it personally. I know how hard those in the industry work. Number 3. Don't wait until the last minute. Even with only 2 episodes a month, when you are the showrunner, audio engineer,
marketing director, researcher, beer taster, scheduler, brewer, producer, and host, something is going to fall through the cracks. And it has. Knock wood, I've only missed releasing an episode on its scheduled release one time, and that was a fluke. I have had more than one occasion during busy seasons of life when I was wrapping up the edits late the night before release. On average, I spend about 6 hours per episode, not including the actual interview. Number 2. Talk less. Yes, I know that sounds counterintuitive, but the point of this podcast is to let my guests talk so that I might learn more about their brewery. I have found that once I get the conversation rolling, I don't have to do much. The side effect is that this cuts down the editing a bit and gives me a lot more content to choose from. Number 1. It's not as easy as it sounds. Hook, line, and drinker. A major part of the podcast is the guest interview. To give them another opportunity to share some of their beer origin story, I reached out to all my guests and asked them one final question to answer. What was the first craft beer that hooked you? Here is what a few of them said.
Hey Brian, congrats on episode 100. That's a big deal. I'm John Dispenza. I think I was your first guest, and I'm formerly from the Untapped Beer app, the co-host of Untapped's Drinking Socially podcast, and now I run a podcast called Beer Me That Movie with my good friend Harrison Hickok. The first beer that hooked me was Franziskaner. I know it's technically an import, but it was my first beer that wasn't Bud Light or Labatt Blue Light if you're from Western New York. I was a young chef in Buffalo trying to impress my friends and the girls we were at the bar with, and I asked the bartender, Adam, who is the greatest bartender I've ever known, for something cool, but not an IPA because I was afraid of them. He gave me a Franziskaner, and before I even knew what a wheat beer was, it completely changed how I thought about beer. I drank a ton of them at that bar, and I still trust my bartender to recommend a good beer because of him. Congrats again, Brian. Here's to the next 100.
Hello, this is Chris
And Andrew.
with One Well Brewing, and we were asked what craft beer hooked us. And for me, it was Sweetwater 420 Ale that I was able to drink at my first Bonnaroo.
How old were you? Two Hearted for me. Bell's Kalamazoo. That's what it is.
Hey guys, to think of it, I actually got hooked on craft beer with a Hefeweizen. I was in Germany performing in a performance organization over there, and wasn't really into beer, but stayed with a family, and they introduced me to this beer that tastes like bananas, and I like bananas, so had a few steins and felt really good and enjoyed it. So yeah, Hefeweizen was my first style. Peace.
Hi, this is Evan Fay with Roar Brewing Company out of Detroit, Michigan. And my favorite, or the craft beer that kind of got me hooked on craft beer in general, was I was stationed in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I would go to Fort Collins all the time and visit New Belgium Brewing Company and do their amazing tours. And I had my first sour beer, Lawfully, and just fell in love with craft beer. And once I realized how dynamic craft beer can be. So for me, Lawfully was that sour that put me over the top and made me officially a craft beer fanatic.
Hi, this is David Young from Buckeye Brewcraft in Columbus, Ohio. I am so proud of the 100 episode fiesta that Brian is putting together, and I'm so excited to talk about the first craft beer that hooked me. It's a little bit interesting because I actually did not drink beer at the time I started brewing. The craft beer that hooked me was Elvis Juice from Brewdog because it was at the time my wife's favorite beer. I started brewing beer because I wanted to be able to give her something that she really enjoyed. We lived in southern Florida at the time, and craft beer was not super available at that time. If I had to give a beer that makes me really, or has made me really excited about craft beer, it's probably Spotted Cow from New Glarus. To get a little more granular, I think that their the Tart Cherry Belgian Red is probably like my favorite craft beer of all time. So cheers to Brian and 100 episodes, and can't wait for 100 and 1,000 more.
Hey, this is Jacob with 10 Wasp Brewing, and the first craft beer that hooked me was Bully Porter from Boulevard Brewing. I had it paired with a chocolate dessert that was presented to me at a craft beer fest, and it was very memorable. The flavors paired perfectly.
Hey, how's it going? Cody Moon here, former brewer of Science Project Brewing in Logansport, Indiana, and Two Times Brewing here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and now home brewer with North Moon Brewing. I would have to say my beer that got me into craft beer, started that love of craft beer, would be Sunlight Cream Ale from Sun King Brewing in Indianapolis. It got me away from the domestics. It then caused me to try their other IPA, Osiris, which then made me fall in love with both Two Hearted and Zombie Dust, and the whole craft beer scene blew up for me at that point.
Hey, Brian, congratulations on 100 episodes. It's a real accomplishment. That's amazing. So good luck with your next 100. I think it's fantastic. I'm Brian from The Good Life Wild Sausages in Gainesville, Florida. And I have a couple of beers. I can't just narrow it to one. The first beer that I remember, craft beer, that really caught my attention was Pete's Wicked Ale. If anybody remembers back in the day, it was the first one that was like widely available. That wasn't Sam Adams. I loved it. It had such a nice crisp bite. Really just excited me, like, oh my gosh, this is what beer could be. But the beer that really, really caught my attention was a beer from a brewery in Baltimore called The Brewer's Art. And the beer was Resurrection. It had a nice, rich, malty flavor, a nice bite of hops. I loved that beer. It was phenomenal. I loved the place. I just read an article that the Brewer's Art shut down just recently in the last couple of weeks, which is tragic. It was a great place and great beer. But it introduced me to the world of craft brewing, and from there I ended up going to another now defunct brewery, the Baltimore Brewing Company, with De Groen's, their Doppelbock, their Dunkels, their Marzen even, their Oktoberfest. It's so good. I just fell in love with those beers. And then, over time, sort of found my way from the malties to the hoppies, and now I'm an IPA guy all the time, it seems. And so now I'm hooked for life. So congratulations again. Those are my beers. That's my story. If you're ever in Gainesville, come on by and get yourself another sausage. And good luck on your next 100. Give me a call at 200, and I'll shoot you another one of these. I'll talk to you later.
To my best beer bud, Brian, this is Daryl. Congratulations on 100. Here's to 100 more. The first beer that got me hooked, it wasn't a craft beer, but it was something I had never had before. I couldn't believe was the exact same price as the other beers that I've had, all those macro ones, and it was Yingling. I had a friend of mine coming out of college that was a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan, would go over to his house every weekend and just tolerate Pittsburgh while enjoying the beer. And I thought, man, so there must be something more, I thought. And then I had another friend of mine, again, we're talking mid-late 90s, and he really did it. We're up from Massachusetts, and it was Sam Adams Summer. Having that during the summer was amazing, got me into Oktoberfest, toured the facility. If you're ever in Boston, I highly recommend it. And that just did it. That opened my eyes to something more, something better, and helped me understand the quality and the craft that goes into this. So that was it. Congratulations on 100, pal. Take care.
Hey, it's Mark, owner of Adroit Theory Brewing in Percival, Virginia. And my first experience drinking craft beer and non-macro beer was when I was living in England in the early 90s, and I would hit the pubs and drink English ale, and specifically cask ale. It really was something that I was very, very excited about and really loved the complexity of tasting all the flavors. When I got back stateside, it was difficult to find something even remotely similar. I stumbled upon New Belgium's Fat Tire and started drinking it and really, really enjoyed it. It was a very simple and straightforward beer, but ticked all the boxes for me at the time. And hard to believe, but, 30 years later, we'd be running Adroit Theory, which makes extreme beers. But it started with drinking English cask and then drinking Fat Tire through the late 90s and early 2000s. Cheers.
Hey, Brian. Trent Snyder here from Bridge Up Brewing Company up in Door County, Wisconsin. Congrats on all the achievements of your podcast. Yeah, so I think the first craft beer that hooked me was a beer from Two Brothers Brewing. My brother and I used to spend Christmas Eve at my cottage in Sturgeon Bay together, and he thought it would be a good idea to bring up a Two Brothers beer to share just before we went to bed. And I remember he poured it, was all excited, and mind you, I was in college at the time, so I was the king of the Keystone Light. And I remember taking my first sip of that beer, and oh my God, it tasted like a box of rusty nails, man. And I'll tell you what, it did not get better the longer it sat. Now, mind you, it was a great beer, but I hadn't had craft beer at that point. So honestly, the first beer that hooked me was that beer, because I figured, there's got to be something better than this. So that started my craft beer journey, trying to find a beer that tasted better than that. Now, I'm an IPA guy now, many, many years later, but and hats off to Two Brothers. They do a hell of a job. There's nothing to say that beer was bad. My mouth was bad, but that's it. Yeah, it was actually a bad experience that hooked me into craft beer. I figure, there's something to this. So it took me down the road of all different kinds of styles, and quite frankly, I've landed on IPAs being my go-to style. So that's it, man. Congratulations again, and come up and see us sometime soon. Take good care.
A huge thanks to each one of you who submitted a clip. I appreciate each of you. Pull up a seat. Now, it's time for Barstool Banter. In this special episode, I bring back Chris Gibbons from Brass Ring Brewing in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He was one of my first interviews during Season 1. Whenever I'm there, he always greets me and treats me like I am a regular customer. It had been a couple of years, so my entire family dropped into the brewery for some beers and food in December. When I mentioned I was nearing episode 100, Chris graciously offered to come help celebrate. I know I've said this before, but I will say it again. If you are ever within an hour of the area, this is a stop you really have to make. The beers are thoughtfully crafted, the scratch food is to die for, and their customer service is second to none. Don't be fooled by breweries that have beer engines and offered chilled cask beers. This is not true to former style. Brass Ring Brewing are oft overlooked in national conversations, but staying true to style and maintaining cask mark accreditation is no easy task. This makes them probably my hidden gem of the Midwest. Welcome to Barstool Banter. I'm sitting down with Chris Gibbons from Brass Ring Brewing in Grand Rapids, Michigan. You might remember him from the first season of the podcast. Chris, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule once again to join me on the podcast.
Hey, no problem, Brian. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
Likewise. It's hard to believe that it was 5 years ago that my brother and I sat there at Brass Ring Brewing while you graciously answered so many questions, educated us on what it takes for cask mark certification, and even served up several beers for us to talk about and taste. Yours was one of the favorite interviews I had that season. And one of the things I think have changed slightly is your vocation since that first interview. Can you tell me what your role is currently at the brewery?
Pretty much the same as it was then. So I make all the beer and I do the marketing and just kind of make sure everybody's getting what they need in order to kind of fulfill their roles on the team to make Brass Ring Brewing the best experience we possibly can for every single person that comes in the door. Still practicing a little bit of law here and there, so that's not done, but that's down to, I practice when I want, how I want. I have one active file right now.
I was going to say, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but, how do you spend your days now with all that extra free time?
No, the brewery is kind of exploded. It's really insane. The cask ale, since I think we met, has taken off. I have a quad engine we put in 2 years ago. We used to put up 2 or 3, and then we would take a break on a batch and not put any up. And we're to the point now, capturing 5 or 6 firkins every batch. And our mindset is behind. So we're not really in tune with exactly where we're going, just out of habit. I think we're doing great. And then I go look in the brew room 8 days later, and we've got 11 firkins. Well, we only filled 5 last time. So we're trying to adjust our production to our sales, I guess. But we demand in the tasting room. That's a nice problem to have.
It is.
You can be looking at your stack, and if you've been in the brewery, we have them all in the back on the wall. So we went from 6 to, I think there's 38 firkins in the back. And it kind of blows me away when I go back there every now and then and pull something down, and I'm like, shit, where did all this beer go? And this is gone.
Yeah.
So, and then I have a bottle program.
Yes, I'm excited about that.
Oh, you want to try it?
I do. So,
all right, I've been waiting.
This is your 8-pound hammer, and it says it's a full-bodied stout. I think it's always been full-bodied, hasn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
An interesting story, though. I could tell you about this.
Please, let's hear about it.
Label. So originally, that's a homebrew beer. That's a beer I started making back in probably 2002 when I learned to make beer. Because stout was kind of the driving force. Because I had a friend that made stout, and he brought it over, and it was really good. And I was like, "You made this?" He's like, "Yeah, easy. Oh, I'll show you how." So he showed me how to make beer. The stout was one of my first kind of like where I designed it the way I wanted it to be. And 8-pound hammer was the beer, and this is the label. So I'm kind of excited to go back to bottling beer. So I just bottled 2 cases off the top of every batch. This week we're selling Star Fox. So I have these 750 bottles, but they're a pain. They don't cap really well. So I went back and I bought swing tops, 1 liter swing tops. And I used to have 16-ounce swing tops with homebrew. I loved because you flip it open and it pops like a champagne cork.
Right. Those are like the old Grosh bottles, right?
Yeah. No, dude, that's cool as shit. So we got those, and my partner Karen, that was pretty much her idea. Because she was like, it was so much fun to open those bottles back in the day before we had the brewery. So we're kind of bringing that around. So the first batch in the swing top bottles is Danny Whizbang. That's a pretty appropriate beer for that.
I was just going to say.
Table service only. So I refill those bottles. So you can't take them home. You can't take them out of the brewery. But more than welcome to buy it at the table, and we'll pop it for you and give you a couple glasses, and you can share it with whoever you're with, or you can just have it all for yourself, whatever you like.
I'm not going to share this tonight. I'm just going to tell you that right now. All right, let's crack this guy open.
Yeah, that's working.
That is a lovely beer, my friend. Wow.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers to you. That is good.
See, and that's bottle conditioned. So that to me is like the best of the best.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm just going to gush. Your beer is pretty amazing already. So to have this amping it up a little bit, I mean, that says a lot on what bottle conditioning can do to a beer.
Yeah, it's soft like a cask ale, which is nice. And it just doesn't have that the forced carbonation. It's the standard. It's how people make it's how we have it. Everybody has it. But there's just something about a cask conditioned beer or a bottle conditioned beer.
Yeah.
Letting the yeast do the work and not making it happen, but letting it happen.
For those that can't see it, it is a really nice dark color. It's got a nice fluffy mocha colored head. Roasty.
Yeah, it smells good.
It does smell amazing.
Not a huge hot presence, but
chocolate on there, maybe coffee. Seems like this would be a good beer for, I don't know, St. Patrick's Day.
It's coming. Which will bring them Yeah, so, it's coming.
That's interesting. So I think since last we talked, I actually started home brewing. So about 3 years ago.
For you.
Yep. So bottle conditioning is something that I do also. So I do 1.5 gallon batches. So real small. So I might get 8, 10, 12 bottles, depending on the beer. I can turn them around fast, and I don't have to drink a whole lot of mediocre beer, and I can share it with friends, and it's been an absolute blast.
I love making beer. So still to this day, what have we been? I think we're on batch 339. So Sunday is 340. I started a new thing last summer is getting in early because we're just so busy on the weekends, especially for lunch. I just want to get out of everybody's hair. Our brewery's small. I get up about 4, I'm there by 4:30, and I'm out of there by 11. But it's nice. I mean, I love it. Yeah, I come in, I do everything the night before. So all I got to do is flip on the kettle, get my yeast out of the cold room, and roll. It's just peaceful. You can see some of it on my little ASMR videos I've been making.
Yeah, I love them. So in fact, I saw recently there was one on your Instagram feed that talked about your current yeast stream. And I found it interesting because you said that it was like 4.5 years old, which is about the same age as my podcast. So I thought, maybe we can talk about this. So what makes your yeast unique, and maybe how do you keep it from genetic drift?
You don't keep it from genetic drift. It does move a little bit, but not a ton. I mean, as long as the beer's tasting good. So the whole idea is this. The yeast that made this beer, which was probably brewed in late November, early December, that yeast has been run continuously since June 20 of 21. So it puts an interesting spin on what it means to the brew house, how it operates. So all of the beers are made with the house yeast. There is no other yeast in the brewery other than the house yeast. And then you need to keep the house yeast vital. So the easiest way to do that, and maybe the hardest way to do that, is you repitch within 24 hours. So we have made beer every 9 days without fail for 4.5 years.
Wow.
We haven't missed. So I always like to say that kind of I'm a bitch for the yeast. So because if it's brew day, if it's Christmas, you're making beer. If I'm going to leave town and go on vacation, it gets done around my schedule in the brew house. We were just going to go to New Orleans, so we were leaving the day after brew day, so we could go for a week and we would come back, and then I'd make beer when I got back. But unfortunately, that got scrubbed. That's kind of the interesting thing about the yeast, and it does move, it does evolve. But I spent a fair amount of time researching kind of the idea of repitching yeast indefinitely. And in the old days, in the before times, before modern convention, that was pretty much how it was done.
Right.
In England, there were some really interesting ways of continuing yeast vitality, which is they would literally brew in a way that they put them in big wooden barrels, and they would inoculate with krausen from one barrel to the next. So they fill one barrel day one, and then they'd brew a barrel a day, and they would allow the krausen from the yeast fermentation, which would carry yeast cells over, and that's how they would keep their yeast going, which is kind of cool.
That's very cool.
We just make sure we have it back in the beer into fresh wort within 24 hours.
What strain did it start out as?
It's English ale yeast from Brewing Science Institute. It still is that strain, kind of.
Right.
It's that strain matured, and I'm sure it's moved a little bit. You can talk about like mutants. You get mutations, and then you get mutant cells. The biomass protects itself. And actually, yeast will protect your beer from bacteria. If you have good, strong yeast and you're pitching at a good rate and they're doubling up the way they're supposed to, so you're expanding your biomass rapidly, bacteria can't get run. They get knocked out. But also that goes with mutant strains. So strains that would do things, so your yeast might move in a way you don't want to if you have compromised your biomass. And the easiest way to do that is go, well, I know I'm supposed to make beer tomorrow, but I'll just do it the day after. Or, oh no, I looked it up. You can keep yeast for 5 days. Well, okay, I suppose you can, but you probably shouldn't. So the whole idea of stringing the yeast along comes with kind of a commitment to taking care of your yeast. It probably is one of my most valuable assets in my brew.
Absolutely.
Because it is the character of our beer. It is what makes brass ring beer in large part is the yeast. It's the only thing that's unique about brass ring brewing, really, at the end of the day, because the malt comes in and anybody can buy Lagran's IPA malt. Anybody can buy Thomas Fawcett's Pearl malt, but what they can't get is my yeast strain. So if you think about it, the demand on the brewer then is to create 13 beers or 14 beers, which we always have available, and to make all of those beers separate and distinct so that when you have a flight, you don't feel like you're tasting a brown version of that same beer I just had that was red, or that same version that was yellow, or whatever. They all have to be separate and distinct, and they have to present as individual styles and beers. And if you think about it, we're using the same yeast and the same water for all the beers. So that gets you down to three things that you get to mess with. You get to mess with your grain bill, you get to mess with your hops, and then most importantly to me as a brewer is you get to mess with the manner in which you actually make the beer. What is your mash temps looking like? What is your boil? How are you boiling? How long are you boiling? What are you doing with your hop additions? What are you doing at post boil, at knockout? That's a huge component to what can happen, especially with the lighter IPAs or pale ales. Like, what are you doing with your hops, knockout, and how long do you wait, and how long do you whirlpool, and how long do you stand before you would add hops and throw it into the fermenter?
Yeah, that's something I've definitely tried to play around with a little bit. I don't have a whirlpool per se, but I'll do the hop stand at the end where I'll swirl things around.
There you
for
do. It's a
couple
wooden
minutes.
spoon, and you still.
I have a hop spider that I swirl around. So, and then I'm like, well, is that enough? I don't know. A couple minutes, 3 minutes. I don't know.
I really enjoyed homebrewing. I went from making 1 to 2, then I would do the doubles. Like, oh, we're going to do a double. And then that turned into, because once you get going, you can just kind of like, it's like a train, right?
Yeah.
You could put an extra car on it, and the train really, it's not like it's like a big deal to get the train out of the station. It's just really, you know what I mean? So I got to the point I was doing doubles where I'd make 4 or 5 gallon batches at a whack.
So the homebrew store that I utilize is in Columbus, Ohio. And David, he's been amazing. He supplies me all my grain because I just want to keep encouraging you. And he's like, 1.5 gallons. He's like, you could do 5. It's like no difference in work and you'd get more beer. And I'm like, yeah, probably, but I need to find people to drink it. That's the problem I have.
Yes, I had no lack of friends that wanted to drink the beer. And it's their fault I have a brewery, because they would always say, you ought to open a brewery, you ought to open a brewery. And after a while, I started drinking that Kool-Aid, so to speak, on that.
Yeah. We're both creatives. And there's something to be said for like, having your ego stroked a little bit when it's like, okay, I've created something, people really like it. So maybe there's some validity to this. Maybe there's something I should really do to follow this up. And I'll tell you what, I think that your friends were spot on in encouraging you to found Brassman Brewing. And I mean, here you are 8 years later, and your beer is amazing, Chris.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way.
I mean, I couldn't believe it'd been 3 years since I've been in the brewery. Every beer that I had, I was like, oh yeah, this is why I love coming here, because there's such consistency. I had the IPA and the cask pour, and I remember the first time I had it, it was just so soft and silky. And I was like, I've never had an IPA like this. I had the same experience 3 years later. I'm like, I've never had anything like this, and I don't want to ever stop.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that.
So you've got 13 or 14. Are those kind of the cores that you stick with?
Pretty much. We don't have a lot of variation. So, we're kind of the opposite of everybody else in that, we dove headlong into just producing a family of beers, the English family, the English tradition. One of the things I'm proud of is that we started, our first menu was, I think it was only 7 beers when we started. And that was 8-pound hammer stout, liquid spirit porter, wild Irish red. Golden Ticket was an original. Rocksteady's an original.
Another good one.
Wayfarer we had on the menu. We ran that up until, I think, last summer. We ran out of Wayfarer, but they just stopped growing the Pacific Jade hop. So at one point, of the 12 beers on the menu, 8 of them are beers that we've been making since the day we opened.
Wow.
There's not a lot of places that can probably say 8 years later, we're still making the core of our menu is the menu that we started with. And quite frankly, I think people would revolt if we touched any of those beers. We ran out of Rocksteady last fall and we got some grief. It's a small team and it's me. I make the beer. And when we were open 7 days a week, we were doing doubles, back-to-back brew days. We were running 7 days a week. It was very difficult on my full-time people, in particular my kitchen, my executive chef, Alex, and then my son, Pat, is kind of his captain. They were getting really fried. finding staff that was reliable for 7 days was becoming a challenge, both in the front and the back. I think it was a year ago, October, we just said, we are not here to ruin ourselves. I'm just not going to expand my business at the expense of people. And people that I love and care for.
That's
I care
it.
too much for them.
Yeah.
And so we did. We went to 5 days. And every 9 days barely keeps me going. But I think we just struggled with this right after the holidays. It looked like we were going to run out of something. And my son said, hey, why don't we just do a double? And I'm like, because I'm not. I have a guy that washes kegs for me, Tim, and we have another guy, Rooney, who helps out, and my son, Sam, who comes in. He's my cellar man. So his job is to capture the yeast. He takes care of the yeast. He's the yeast whisperer. He lets me know what's going on every batch. He'll give me a report on what he thinks, is it looking right, whatever. But a lot of that yeast stuff is dependent on managing your biomass and brewing beers in a way that you're not stressing your yeast. So you try to get your low gravity beers done in a row, and then Lake Coast is a high gravity beer. That's 8 bags of grain plus specialties. And so you wouldn't want to go from a 4 or 5 bagger and then jump right into a big beer like that. I think you'd stress your yeast. That's just my feeling. So you'd want to do like a pale ale. That's like a 6 or 7 bagger. So you'd want to go from a 4 or 5 to a 6 or 7, build your biomass up, maintain that yeast in a way. Because, they are little creatures, right? You know what I mean? You kind of have to have a feel for. That's the art of craft beer. All of this is craft, right? Yeah. At least that's what we endeavor to do is to try to operate and make beer in a way that is, I don't know why I'm doing it this way, but it feels right. As long as it makes sense. I don't want to sound like I'm crazy or something, but.
Well, you are a beer savant, if you ask me. So, there's something to be said for that, pal. I keep drinking this 8-pound hammer. It's so good. It is so good.
I love it.
What kind of hops do you use in it?
Willamette. Willamette and Northern Brewer are two, for the traditional styles, I use a fair amount of Willamette and Northern Brewer.
Okay.
Which even in Hopland, the hop thing has been crazy, trying to get hops. The marketplace is just kind of a mess.
So out of curiosity, with all the tariffs and other things going on, has that impacted your ability to get your supplies from England and Ireland? Because I know you try to stay traditional.
No, I haven't had any trouble at all.
Okay.
And actually, surprisingly, my costs in the brew house, Country Malt, it's where I source almost all of my grain from, Country Malt. They made the decision to kind of shoulder the tariff thing and not pass those costs along yet. So things have remained fairly stable. But there's been a lot of volatility in the hop market for me individually. I think personally, just because of some of the hops that we've used, like we lost Pacific Jade. And it's amazing that worldwide, the level of control, or at least how it appears to me as a little consumer, like Pacific Jade just disappeared. It's just gone.
So nobody's making it at
whoever
all.
was growing it, they all stopped. They all kind of stopped at the same time.
Wild.
The same thing with Glacier hop, which was a great hop. And that's we'll see. So that's my golden ticket. I bought as much as I could get, and it's frozen. So far it's holding up. But at some point I'm going to have to get off the Glacier train on golden ticket. But that's a cross between Northern Brewer and Willamette, interestingly enough. I've talked to some hop people, and they've given me some ideas for trying to replicate the Glacier experience. I'm not going to have to cross that bridge to the end of the year because I don't want to see Golden Ticket go away.
No, that's a great beer too.
It's going to change a little bit. Hopefully it's not like New Coke.
Oh boy. Let's not go down that path, Chris. Let's introduce something different. I guess I've never really thought about it before because, again, I'm buying 5 ounces at a time, like when I brew. But is that just because of the swing in styles? Like, for example, I know like Brew One has been a huge one because it's got the nice tropical, good IPA kind of dry hopping.
Oh, they catch fire. Lake Coast is our flagship IPA at this point. It took over. That replaced, in a sense, Wayfarer. And My hop broker that I deal with a lot is Hop Alliance, Brian Tennis. This was, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. He suggested that I try HBC 586,
Yeah.
which at that point was an experimental.
Right. Now it's crush, I think.
So, I mean, my problem is I'm small. I don't use a ton of hops. I use hops, but I'm not like Shorts or Founders here in town or whatever. I have a craft brewery that takes care of a tasting room. You know, I can't do a contract. It wouldn't make any sense. Hey, can I contract for 100 pounds? But crush, I use like 200 pounds in a year.
Yeah.
So, and then it went to crush. I was excited because I thought, oh, now it's all going to be available. Well, no, not really, because it's all under contract. So, like, you can't find crush on the spot market, like Lupulin Exchange and spot market resource kind of purveyors. It's like eBay for hops. So you can't get it. So I called Brian. Hey, Brian, dude, you got to help me out. That's my number one beer. I'm out. He's like, sorry, dude, you're stuck. I called my guy at Country Mall. Hey, good luck with that, man. And then I found some in Ohio, and they were a year old, which is not a big deal, really. And he had 90 pounds. I said, I'll take it. So I'm like, we're saved. Because I mean, that's stressful when you think you can't make a beer that everyone loves. And I get a text from the next day. Sorry, man. We sold that over the holidays.
Oh.
And they just updated the system. And I didn't know that. But God loves brass ring. Did you know that?
I do.
And he loves brass ring just a little more. So I found a place out in Washington State that had 25 hops. And so I got 200 pounds. And I had just about given up. I mean, I had been scouring the internet and making phone calls and had come up, empty.
Wow.
And after about a week of frogging around, I finally found it. So thank God.
I mean, that's good living, Chris. That's what it is.
Well, maybe it's good brewing.
We'll take that too. The normal person that comes in and enjoys your beer doesn't realize that these things aren't sustainable necessarily. Like they ebb and flow with the market, just like the stock market.
Yeah. Or that the ingredients we use are natural.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be variation. And there's absolutely nothing I can do about it because we're using 4 ingredients. We're using the finest stuff we can find.
Yeah.
And you know, it just has variation. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it good.
If you were to change something and go to some sort of artificial ingredient, people would notice. They would notice it right away because that's not authentic.
I don't use anything. It's water, barley, hops, and yeast.
Right.
If you can't get it out of that, you're not going to get it at my brewery. But that doesn't mean that brewing assistance in the brew house is bad. You know what I mean? If you're comfortable and you want to use kettle defoamer, knock yourself out. You know, it's actually, it makes life easier. A boil over is a pain in the ass. And, you know, we get 3 or 4 a year because we don't use a defoamer in our boil. And so for the first 30 minutes, I literally have to stand there and watch it. And, you know, I'm going to maybe get process going on my chiller and get that sanitized. And I like to start that as early as I can. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I think I have time on my boil to jump over and get that moving. And then the next thing I got to hear somebody yelling, "What are you doing?" The kettle's boiling over.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a hot mess. We've actually learned to deal with it over the years in a way it's not that big a deal.
What's your favorite part of brew day?
I like doing the mash. Mashing is my favorite part. You know, the mash is the beginning and the end of the beer for the most part, because the rest of it's pretty easy. From there on out, it's just paying attention and making sure that you're setting your clock and you're boiling for the times you're supposed to, and you're not late on your hop additions or early. But so the mashing is, to me, that's where all the magic happens. And you know, you'll see a lot in social. I'll put a lot of pictures up of my thermometer on my mash tun because, you know, I know where I want these beers to fall. And to me, literally, a degree is failure. If you're looking to do a red and it comes up at 152 and not 153, 153 and a half, I doubt that the customer is going to know, but I know. Yeah. And I know that's not what that beer wants. You know, my ESP is big. I want 153, close to 154, maybe a touch over and let it come down. So to me, managing those temperatures and hitting the temperatures, the mash tun's static in our brew house. We have no ability to control the temperature. So, you kind of take what your ambient temperature is trending in my brew logs. It gives me an idea of what my strike water has to be. It's anywhere from 168 in the summer when it's warm to like last week, because it's been super cold, 172. And I barely hit 155 on the snout.
Yeah.
I was concerned. Because I think mash temp is like the beginning and the end of beer, potentially. That's a kind of like a terminal event. If you don't have your right mash temp, you can just forget that batch. It's done. There's not much you can do. It doesn't mean it's going to be a bad beer, but from a brewer's perspective, because if you don't care, why are you doing it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it doesn't mean something to you, why are you doing it? I know why I'm doing it, because I love it. I love offering it to people. I like the care that we can do with our beer. I like the point that we can make with our beer, which is driving home English ales like they'd never had before. And I do know this, without being like a braggart, when a tray of cask ales goes out and they're done by one of my staff who are so good at what they do, that's just next level stuff. You're not going to go find that. Really, there aren't many places that are going to knock that out for you the way that we do. I mean, that's a huge motivation for me. It's why I do it.
The bottom line is that you are not only crafting beer, but you're crafting an experience there for the people that walk into your brewery. Whether it's the food, whether it's your front of the house people, whether it's the beer, you're crafting an entire experience. And it's tough to do. It's tough to get everybody on the same page for that.
It can be.
You've got your little Kindness is Courage initiative going on. Tell me a little bit more about that, because I think in this day and age, I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind and to promote.
Well, I think that's just part of like at the core at the brewery has always been, I used to say it almost kind of like I'm a criminal defense trial attorney. I made a career in a toxic swamp of awfulness for the most part. And I always kind of like thought of my partner, Karen, and I were lawyers as being like little canaries in a coal mine. Or we would have clients who were not being treated fairly, or, they did something wrong, but they're trying to make it so much more. And it's just awful. And I would always want to say to myself, like, I'm not here to get people off. I'm here for the truth, and I'm here to defend. And I'm here to make them cheat. If they want my client the way they say they want them, which isn't accurate or true, then they're going to have to cheat to do it and make them cheat. And when you come into our brewery, the brewery is everything but that environment. So like our number one rule is no a-hole rule in our little team manual. When you come into the brewery, everyone's welcome, unless you're an a-hole, then you're not. But I don't care who you love. I don't care where you go to church. I don't care where you come from. Just be nice and have an open heart. You don't even have to have all that. Just come in and don't be an a-hole. Because the world, every day, you go to your bank and it's a fee. You go to your insurance company and there's a charge. Oh, you're always told that you're not enough. And also, we need this from you too. So coming into the brewery, everyone's welcome. It should be affirming. You should feel taken care of. You should feel cared for. And you should feel valued. And I don't care who you are. I mean, that's why we put up 800 hand-cut butterflies. We've done it 3 times in the Spectrum in June, so that everybody knows everyone's welcome here. And so I was watching the news. This gets around to this point of what this band is, and it's become kind of prescient because I think that things now in February of 26, it's insane. It has gone absolutely insane. And I was watching the news in October, and I'm a pretty tough trial lawyer, and I own my own business. I'm an entrepreneur who, with my partner and my team, have scratched a business out of nothing. I mean, that building, we gutted it and put it back together, and we built the business. I mean, on Reddit, people didn't really appreciate 2 lawyers striking out to build a brewery because they just thought it was a vanity project. But they don't know me, and they don't know my partner. And it's not a vanity project. I really fucking care. And I watched the news, and I was driving up the highway an hour and a half later. I felt like I was having an anxiety attack. Where is the safety anymore? Where is the consistency? Where is everything that we come to expect in our world and our broader society from our government in particular. Where is that leadership now? It's fractured, it's schizophrenic. And, like you mentioned tariffs. I mean, you watch the news, you kind of thought that, hey, maybe this is going to be Armageddon, Am I going to have to close half my room and send everybody home and make beer, and Karen's going to be the waitress, and, I'm going to have to strip down like I did for the pandemic? So it was concerning to me, like, what can we do? Because I don't necessarily feel we can vote ourselves out of this mess at this point. I can anyway. And I don't know what I can do, but I thought, the one thing I know I can do is I can be positive, and I can be accepting, and I can be kind. And it takes courage sometimes in this day and age to not take the bait, to not get angry, and not become part of whatever that maelstrom in the world is. And so what I wanted to do was create a wave of positivity out of my brewery. So out of my little door at 2404 Eastern, I want a light blue wave, because light blue is a very spiritually positive color. And I wanted people to, one, understand that it's good to be kind. And for people who are good-natured and want to be kind, just to kind of encourage them and ratify for them that it's not easy to be kind in this world. So kindness is courage. And so I tell people I'm recruiting them to join my wave of positivity, pushing back against the rising tide of toxicity.
I love it, man. Got my bracelet.
I'm glad you got it on. When my guests come in that I've given them the band, it just makes me happy. Like, what do we really sell at Brass Ring Brewing Company? What do we really sell at the end of the day? We mask acceptance and affirmation and care. That's why people come to our brewery. It feels good to be there.
I so enjoy conversing with you, Chris. Probably
I enjoy being on your show. I enjoy talking about beer. I'll talk about my brewery all day long because it's basically my obsession.
So, Chris, this is my 100th episode we're doing, so I really appreciate you jumping on and being a part of it. You have been a big part of craft beer and how I view it, so I
thank you,
appreciate
Brian.
you, man.
You've been a great customer and a great influencer with your podcast, so thank you. Thank you back.
Look forward to seeing you again sometime in 2026, I hope.
Yes.
Knockwood. Thanks also for the beer. The beer's great. I appreciate that.
No worries.
Uphill both ways. As I look ahead, I don't really know what the future holds. I don't have a vision as of yet for the next chapter of the podcast. Is it a new series of topics? Adding video? Changing the content altogether? Including some Patreon-like content? Or maybe it is closing time for the podcast. I mean, it is the 5-beer plan, not the 10-beer plan. I would love any thoughts that you might have. Now is the time to help steer the 5-beer plan. Regardless of where it goes, I do know one thing. As long as craft beer exists, the Everyman will keep searching and striving to bring you, my faithful listener, the very best that I encounter on my personal ale trail. 100 bottles of beer on the wall. No amount of words will ever fully capture the extreme gratitude I have for all of you. But for those who have directly influenced the podcast in one way or another, here are 100 seconds of cheers to you. My traveling companion, partner in crime, and love of my life, Betsy, thank you for countless hours and locations of beer hopping. Kaylee, Mom, Dad, and Red, White, and Blue. Jay, Mattio, Ken Dub, and Little Kings. Old Wilson and the Seattle crew. The Barnetts. John and Harry. Kyle and Tim. Beerskis Logan and Daryl, you're the best. Beer Pals, Mark and Chad, thanks for the beers. Brett for introducing me to Untapped. I miss our post-work beers. The AVL crew. Northern Brewer and that 1-gallon beer making kit. David and the Buckeye Brewcraft team who enable my homebrew habit. Kegland and the Wrapped Pill. Home Labs 120 can mini fridge. All the special guests, past, present, and future, who will have or have appeared. All the breweries whose beers I've reviewed. Tavor. The various festivals I've attended and those I've met, including Burning Foot Beer Fest, Frozen Firkin Fest, Lord of the Hops, Northwest Ohio Brewbecue, Washington Brewers Guild Winterfest, Brewed in the Fort, and Florida Craft Brewers Festival. Local bottle shop Harvest in Holland, the untold dozens who I've interacted with at the breweries, those who have gifted, bought, shared, or traded beers with me, the Sunday Funday crew at Big Pines, Spotify creators, Yeti Blue Mics, Sticky Brand and Vistaprint for some great promo supplies, and anyone who I may have forgotten, thank you. Woo! It can be said in over 7,000 different ways. Whether you say gracias, merci, grazie, danke, havala, obrigado, dziękuję, shishi, arigato, or spasibo, I would simply say thank you. Take one down and pass it around. Beer is universal.
Last call.
It's nearly time to wrap things up, but first, one more for the road. In celebration of this 100th episode, I'm drinking Self-Mummification from Masthead Brewing in Cleveland, Ohio. From the brewer, Self-Mummification is a double IPA hopped aggressively with Cashmere, Idaho 7, Mosaic, and Centennial. Expect notes of stone fruit, tangerine, and subtle berry, rounded out with a punchy bitterness and dry finish. Self-Mummification is a testament to the sacrifice we're willing to make in the pursuit of hoppiness. Without further delay, this is an 8.5% Imperial IPA, clocking in at what else but 100 IBUs. So I think the name's kind of fun. Of course, the last episode I talked about ancient Egypt. Anyway, mummification is like the process by which we'd preserve a human body after death by removing moisture through natural means or by artificial embalming. So I have a feeling that this beer is going to really dry me out when I drink it. And I'm looking forward to that. So I poured this beer out into a tulip glass, coming from one of my favorites, Archival Brewing. It pours a clean straw color, and it has a nice white fluffy head. When I popped the top on this, there was an explosion of all sorts of tropical fruit. So, on the nose, getting notes of stone fruit, berry. It just is so appealing. A little bit of citrus, kind of a big tropical fruit salad. And surprisingly, this beer is very clean looking for a double IPA. First sip impression. Oh yeah. This is fantastic. I'm already getting that nice peachiness, some of the citrusy tangerine, and on the finish, just a shade of that subtle berry flavor. Wow. Took another sip here, and now I'm getting that bitterness that was described here. Punchy bitterness. It isn't like a in-your-face kind of bitterness, but it's one that just really creeps up on you. And as the beer has settled a little bit in my mouth and I've swallowed this, it's like I've got cotton balls in my mouth. It is just drying my tongue right out. It is crazy. It leans into kind of a medium-bodied mouthfeel. Wow. Again, this is just such a great beer. Style-wise, I'd say this is a really good example of an Imperial IPA. So this one, it's just such a great beer. I'm going to give this one 4.5 tasters out of 5 on the flight board. Cheers, Masthead Brewing, and thanks for brewing a proper beer to celebrate my 100th episode. I am always looking for new craft beverages to review. So if you've got one from your favorite local craft brewery, meadery, or cidery you'd like me to drink and describe, reach out and let me know. That's all for this special episode of the 5 Beer Plan. With so many podcasts out there, thanks for choosing to listen to mine. Join me next time as I fire up the mass shift drive for another trip back in time continue with the fermentation of the latest homebrew project, get fired up with Dan Haskins and Eric Hatton from Campfire Brewing, and review another beer. Remember to hit the subscribe button on your preferred podcast platform to be notified of new episodes. Follow me on Instagram as well, 5 Beer Plan 2022, to see what is happening on my personal ale trail. I'd love to hear from you, and there are several ways you may do so. Leave a comment for this episode on Spotify, direct message me on Instagram, or email me directly, 5beerplan@frontier.com. Be sure to support your local breweries, choose your beers wisely, and drink them responsibly. Until next time, keep walking your ale trail, and stay thirsty, my friend.